The weekly Industry Angel podcast hears from business leaders and entrepreneurs who share their stories and that all-important light bulb moment. This can inspire us all and maybe scratch that itch and kickstart that idea that keeps you awake at night. Welcome to episode 10 of the Industry Angel. I hope you've had a fantastic Easter break. If you listen to this podcast, hopefully you're relaxing and you haven't got your rugrats running around being off school. It's a lovely sunny day here in the northeast and I've just made myself a lovely cup of tea from my camping kettle. Seriously, don't ask what a morning. My kettle decided to pack in and I thought, right, okay, I'll be like Bear Grylls. I'll get the camping kettle out. I'll be in the garage and put the kettle on the stove, forgot all about it. Mrs. F decided to scream down the stairs that they could hear some sort of whistling going on. The kitchen's now full of steam, all the windows are steamed up. I've got wrong. This podcasting looks all rock and roll, isn't it? Anyway, today I'm delighted to bring you inspirational speaker, author, and extreme empowerment specialist, Taz Thornton. Hi, Taz.
Hi, Ian. Thanks for having me on.
Good stuff. Thanks for your time. So Taz, we've had some fantastic speakers across the episodes. We shared their insights into business, success stories, but we aren't all rock stars. And I wanted to discuss with you, being in the corporate world, working for the man, but then feeling the need to kind of move out and change direction.
Absolutely.
What would you call that, Taz?
Saving my own life, I think, really.
Well, that's why you're on, Taz, because you've been there and you've done that. Yeah, you've been that person.
Yeah. I think that the trouble with a lot of kind of Western corporate world is there's just so much bullshit. And the trouble is that we all believe it and we swallow it down and we gulp it up and we start to wear it. And then eventually so many of us get to this point where we've done the whole, climbing the corporate ladder and then realizing it's against the wrong wall. But by then for a lot of us we're trapped. And I was kind of in that position. I'd gone as high as I could. I was UK director for what at the time was one of the world's biggest business-to-business publishers. So lots of jetting about all over the place and the bonuses and the nice car and the nice holidays and the private healthcare and all that malarkey. But I wasn't happy. I'd gone through this journey where I'd been promoted and promoted and promoted, and that was great for the ego, but eventually I realised it was crushing my soul. There was just nothing there. And well, it came to crunch time for me, and my whole message now is helping people to get back in touch with their authenticity, helping them to realise what's really going to be filling them up in life before they have to get to crunch time. Nobody should have to get to that point where they're up against the wall before they leap. Although I won't lie to you, that leap was absolutely terrifying.
I can well imagine. Can I be personal here? When was that, Taz? In terms of, how old were you when you felt that urge?
I think there'd always been a little bit of a kind of tug at the sleeve for years and years and years. But how long ago did I actually leap? I think it would have been. I'm going to be a bit vague here. 6-8 years ago, something like that. I'm not a big calendar watcher, to be honest. So yeah, it would have been somewhere between 6 and 8 years ago. I think might have been a bit longer. I'm not sure. But it came after. Well, I think everybody says I have a catalyst, don't they? Mine was going through what I now kind of refer to as my 8 weeks of hell. I had a series of things that started to just go. Everything started to go a bit peat, and there were a couple of deaths in the family, including my dad, which was completely unexpected. My partner got diagnosed with a pretty nasty health condition, and she got made redundant, and there was lots of stuff as well that wouldn't be appropriate to go into publicly, but lots of stuff hit. And I went from being the kind of cool, calm, collected one that everybody brought their shit to and for it to be sorted out, to someone who was just crushed under the weight of it all. And I kept going, and the pinstripes became my mask, and I'd put on the pinstripes and go to work and put the mask on and everything would be fine, and then I'd go and park somewhere in my lunch break and phone home and cry for an hour, then I'd put the mask back on, go back to work, get home, cry, put the jacket back on the next morning, and it went on like that until I was literally shriveling up on the inside, and I thought, well, something's got to give. And I guess for most people, the death of a loved one is a bit of a reality check, but that's followed by everything else that hit. It was just like a massive ton of bricks fell down onto my shoulders, and I didn't have the strength anymore. So I formed a plan and started shoveling my way out with a teaspoon.
You kind of didn't really put things into perspective. It was maybe forced upon you, like physically, mentally, emotionally, just hit you.
Yeah, it did, absolutely. I'm not sure about forced, but then that's where I can differ to some of my corporate motivational colleagues, in that I might be a bit more of a tree hugger, in that I don't believe anything happens for no good reason. I believe that everything that happens in our lives, on some level, we've manifested that to bring us the teachings that we need. And I believe all that happened at the same time, because otherwise I could have still been sitting there and, dying on the inside, but okay on the outside, and soaking up the holidays and driving around in a nice big Audi, but not doing what I was meant to be doing. And what I'm meant to be doing is helping other people and affecting others to the point where they don't have to hit that breakdown phase that I hit. And now I see it as a breakthrough. At the time, it was hideous. But now I think it's one of the best things that ever happened to me, because if I was sitting there in that working environment, who am I going to be helping? Well, the colleagues sitting around me, and I'd got to the point where I was going to some of the other managers and saying, can I work with that failing staff member you've got? Because that's what was filling me up, and I seemed to be able to get people out of the doldrums when it was needed. But if I was still sitting there, I could affect the 20 or so people around me. Now I can get out there and affect the world. I don't mean for that to sound egotistical, but while I'm sitting in an office at work, there's only so many people I can reach, and now I can reach all those people who are ready for change. And I think that's another important point with my work here. And I'm not about going in through the back door and pulling people in and getting them to change when they're not ready. I'm not interested in that. I'm not interested in dragging people in, kicking and screaming. But if there are people out there who realise that they're a bit dissatisfied, that life isn't filling them up anymore, they know something needs to change, but they don't know what. When they're ready for that change, come find me, I'll help. But it's only when people are ready for it.
Taz, that's why you're here, because I genuinely believe there's people listening now who can totally understand and relate to where you've been, in that corporate world. And it is scary. And a question that I'd like to ask is, you had your breakthrough, you turned it as.
Yeah.
How did you quit? What did you do from there? You got that right. I've got to go.
Yep.
How did that work? What did you do?
To use one of Brad's favourite phrases, I suddenly grew a lot of extra testicular fortitude. I remember sitting there, and I'd kind of talked to the other half about it a few times, and she was so amazing when she could see how difficult it was for me. But again, my mask was so solidly in place. I'd confided in a couple of people at work, the other managers, that had been put onto antidepressants, and I was having a bit of a tough time. But again, because there were others in the organisation who were shouting and kicking harder and louder than I was, I think the attitude was, oh, well, they're giving them out like pills now, aren't they? And I think I'm going off at a bit of a tangent here. Sorry, I will come back to your point. But I think this is one of the big issues in corporate life, is that the people who cry most publicly and scream the loudest are the ones that get all the attention. And I'm not saying they shouldn't, because employees do have a duty of care to their staff, but they need to also be aware of the stoic one sitting over in that corner who's got all kinds of shit raining down on their shoulders, but is somehow managing to hold it together for work. There's an imbalance. We get caught up in the moment and we deal with the obvious stuff in front of us, and then the stuff around the edges, we take our eye off it and we can't see it. And I was the one who was sitting there holding it together and crumbling. But I've never been the kind to wade in and start sobbing in a corridor and wait for somebody to find me, because I'm there to do a job. But anyway. The place we are now in the Western world, and with a lot of government cutbacks, this kind of more and more work and more pressure being lumped on our shoulders, less resource to do that. Yeah.
And there is a lot of people under pressure there, and I guess you're there to help, yeah?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's an easy trap to fall into. But I wouldn't want to be an employer these days. I really wouldn't. There's too much to look after in terms of employee health and safety and getting the job done and making sure everybody's happy. It's, woo, freelance all the way for me. Okay, but back to that question, how did I do it? Well, again, I'd been making noises at home about needing to get out And I dropped enough hints to the point where my partner started saying, "Look, you've got to move. Nothing is worth this." And to put this in context, she'd been self-employed for a while as well. We'd moved over to Lincolnshire from Kent when we were both editors of different B2B magazines. And when I was leaving, I was group editor, and I was leaving to come over here. And of course, I didn't want to lose her as well. So it was the first time they'd ever agreed to let someone work from home. So we'd both ended up working from home. But then when her redundancy hit, she'd started running this PR and copywriting business, which was great. But because I'd got the kind of high-powered, high-flying job, there was never a lot of pressure to bring in a lot of cash from the other side. So she was working and doing great stuff, but there was certainly we certainly weren't in a position where one of us could just stop working. So we started to do things in our spare time. For a while, I started 5 to 9ing with her, just to be doing something I enjoyed. And during that time, we launched a digital magazine for Twitter called Tweeting Times, which was the first interactive digital magazine for the Twitterverse, if you like. And because Ash and I were both ex-journalists, it was at a time when all the kind of journalistic news scandal was coming up, and people needed something fresh. So we went out there with an open, clean attitude to journalism, just to tell the real stories without all the kind of gutter stuff that was going on at the time. So what happened was that magazine came out, and a lot of the high-powered people in the Twitterverse, some of the celebs out there and those with bigger followings and key opinion leaders started to notice and say, "Hey, these guys are doing something good, let's have a bit of that." So we ended up interviewing the likes of, well, that's how I met Brad, actually. Brad, Gail Porter, Stephen Fry gave us a testimonial. It was great. And that was one of the things that gave me the confidence to leap. So it wasn't bringing in massive money. There was a third guy in the business who was supposed to be monetizing it, and he had to go back into corporate life. So that left me working in my proper job. It left Ash running a copywriting business, and it left us with this magazine with amazing potential, but we'd now have to write it, design it, go do the video interviews, and sell it. And for a while we managed. We got the likes of Cadbury's in, for instance, which was huge, really punching above our weight from a back bedroom. But something had to give. The plan was that this would take off, it would give us a bigger income, and it would give me the flexibility in hours to get out there and help the people I needed to help, and do the motivational speaking and run the workshops and have this amazing life. But then we realised we couldn't do it all. So I leapt. And I remember the day when I leapt, I sat at my desk. I thought, I've got to do it. Can't remember the one thing that triggered it, but I remember sitting in my little goldfish bowl of an office and thinking, this is not my life. I can't do what I need to do. This is crushing me. And looking out at all the faces out there, and none of them looked particularly happy either. And I just thought, Taz, what are you doing? What are you doing? And just to paint the picture here, we'd got no savings because we didn't need to save because I've got this nice big job. And all we got was debt. No savings, debt, shitloads of ambition. So I sat at my desk and I redrew the entire company's organogram without me in it. So I sat on my own, restructured the company, called the other director into the boardroom because it was split down the middle. I looked after editorial and the creative side, and the other director looked after sales and commercial. And I just gave her the sheet, and she looked at it for a few seconds and went, you don't appear to be on this. And that's when I broke. That's when the Taz, who was holding it all together and was obviously only popping a few antidepressants for the fun of it, actually cracked. And I went, oh no, I'm not. And I don't think she quite knew what to do.
You didn't just quit then, did you? You did it in style, I think.
No, I did it in style. So, yeah, reorganised it. But then, of course, the thing to remember is this was an international company, so our head office was in France. So then I had to wait, and we had to get the guys over from Paris, from head office, sitting around the table and explaining why I would leap. You know, they didn't need me to go, they didn't want me to go. And it's pretty tough telling people that have essentially given you some great chances and have been treating you pretty well for the past few years, to say, look, guys, this isn't filling me up, I'm not enjoying it. And that's all I could say, just that I couldn't do what I needed to be doing there. There were other people in that business who could do the work just as well as I could do. And I wasn't able to fulfill my potential there because there wasn't the route I needed to start walking down wasn't available in that particular business structure, and they were great. It took quite a few weeks to progress it, and then eventually I was out. And then after that, we realised that we couldn't do everything at once. We had to put tweeting times on ice, and everything got a little bit scary. And it sounds very easy to say, take that leap of faith. And I remember there was a medicine woman I once knew. He said, Taz, you need to understand the biggest reason that people neglect to take a leap of faith is that they forget the Creator will catch them. And I was like, yes, that's it. I need to remember the universe will support me. And then all of a sudden, what the hell am I paying the mortgage with? Oh my God.
Well, do you know, Taz, if I could take you back to that moment. I mean, I know you're very spiritual, and you mentioned you're in your goldfish bowl there.
Yeah.
What was that like? That sort of epiphany where did you feel yourself when you just thought, right, I'm done? You know, or did you go into some other zone, or?
I think I was proper in the zone. I mean, because I'd been talking about it to Ash for a few weeks, and funny story is, I think I knew that I needed to do it, and about a week before I actually did it, I got home one night, turned the key, walked in the door, and just said, I've done it. And I said, you've done what? And she said, I said, I've done it. And she went, what? You've quit? And I went, yeah. And because she just went, oh, okay, well, let's work out what we're going to do then. And of course I hadn't. But because I dipped a toe in the water first, I tested it, and I knew the support would be there. So luckily, when I went back and said I have actually done it, she did believe me. She didn't do the whole the girl who cried wolf thing. But yeah, I just went into that zone, and I think we do sometimes. I think I kind of went into robot mode because...
Yeah, it feels like a protection, actually.
Yeah.
I feel it was a bit of, you know, you go into kind of protection mode, nature kind of takes over and it just goes.
Absolutely. And then with my spiritual head on, the important thing from when we do go into that kind of robot zone is to make sure we get back out of it and we don't stay in that zone, because that's when we can lose part of ourselves.
I mean, you mentioned the cash void there, and the last podcast we did, we discussed that as well. You know, it all sounds well and good, you know, calling it a day and going for it, but there's bills to pay.
Yeah.
I guess, was that your 5 to 9 paying for the bills after you quit, or?
Yeah, it got to the point, I remember one Christmas, we kind of ticked over and we were okay until, and again, here I go with my dodgy timelines, it probably would have been, I don't know, five years ago, something like that. We got to a point where just before Christmas, about 5 of our biggest clients all stopped paying all at the same time. They all went into their own cash flow issues, and of course we were at the end of the chain. So it was something like between, I don't know, October and January, we were meant to get X thousands of pounds in, and it was in the hundreds. And that's like 1 month's money. What are we going to do? And we were surviving by doing car boots for a while. It's like, right, look around the house. What can we go and flog this week? But you know what? Every time, without fail, we managed to get just enough. And of course, just enough is okay, but you're never going to fly on just enough. Nobody wants to have just enough, because just enough is scraping by and still crapping yourself over where next month's bills are going to come from. So the trick is moving from just enough into being in flow. And this is where my tree-huggy nature comes in a little bit. It's my belief that if we sit in the fear, then we send something out there that stops the flow, that stops more money coming to us. So through all of it, somehow you've got to find a way to trust. But that does not mean going down the secret path. These people who say, oh, I've read The Secret, so I'm spiritual, it makes me laugh. The Secret's great. You've found your path. Fantastic. But if all you do is sit in the middle of that path, you're just going to get run over. You've still got to take positive, determined action to work with the energies of the universe, or whatever you want to call it, to make these things happen. There's no point just sitting cross-legged, chanting Om and waiting for things to fall into your lap. It doesn't happen. You've still got to get off your backside, get out there, and make it happen. And all the time you're sitting in fear, you can't make stuff happen because you're too crippled by your own emotions.
It's funny you mentioned trust there, and again I mentioned this the last episode where I think I'd said to the guest, you know, burn your boats, you know, go for it. Fate and nature will just take its course. And so you're saying you just trust, go for it, but trust, and don't be fearful. Just it'll work out for you. Or as
Yeah.
long as you've got that commitment, as long as you've got that passion,
Well, yes.
the money will come to you.
Yes,
Or...
of course things will work out, but it depends on your definition of things will work out. And this is, I've got this big thing about responsibility, and this comes again from some of my spiritual beliefs. One of the best teachers I've ever worked with, a guy called Chris Lutterchow, who runs the Northern Drum Shamanic School down in the southwest. I remember him talking about responsibility and victim warrior states. And without going too far down that path, because I know this is very much a business podcast, but there's this belief in the shamanic world, as I was taught it, that you're either being a spiritual warrior, which means you're standing in your power, in your strength, you're trusting and you're going for it. And when shit hits, you're not going, why me, why me? You're going, this is unfair, this feels crap. But you know what? It's mine. There'll be something to learn from it. So game on, let's get through it. Anything other than being in that spiritual warrior mindset is victim. Now, here's the thing with trusting and going for it. If you're not fully taking responsibility for everything in your life, you're probably not going to make it as you see it. Because if you say to most people who are in the kind of Western mindset, what does it mean to have made it, they're going to start talking the Ferrari, the mansion, the yacht, the offshore bank accounts, all that malarkey. But that's not it for everyone. People don't know why they want these things, and the why is so massively important. So to come back to that point of responsibility, we are very reactive generally. We're conditioned to be knee-jerk. We're conditioned for something to happen to us and go, you bastard, why has that happened to me? Instead of having the ability to just stop, to work out why that's come, what you can learn from it, what you can do with it, and how you can turn that around. So we all have, if we take the time to just stop and smell the flowers for a minute, we all have that ability to respond appropriately to any given situation. Response, ability. And all the time we're stuck in this mindset of blaming everybody else for our life. We blame the government, we blame our peers, we blame our co-workers, we blame the system, we blame the fact that we had ginger hair as a kid, or we wear glasses, whatever it is. All the time we're blaming external factors. We cannot take full responsibility for our lives, and until we take full responsibility for our lives, which means not blaming anybody else for anything, you've attracted everything in your life for a reason. Until you believe that, bring that on board, accept it, and work with it. You can't actually affect the change you need. So it all depends on your mindset. Yes, I do believe in trust. Yes, I believe everything will be okay. But okay doesn't always mean swimming in pound notes. Sometimes okay means getting some pretty tough life lessons. But if you can find the lesson in it, there's the richness.
Indeed, and I mentioned there about making it, and our friend Brad Burton from episode 3, who we spoke about, Brad was all about the happiness side of it, and Brad did mention, the Ferraris, Lamborghinis actually was his choice, but he termed it as trinkets, and it stuck in my mind.
Yeah.
Everyone going for these trinkets, and you're right. I asked Brad, so what are you going for, and he just said happiness.
Yeah, and he's absolutely right. I mean, Brad's not quite as tree huggy as I am, but I think our views are pretty similar when it comes down to it. We've all had crap in our lives. We all have. There's another part of my backstory, which is too much to go into here, where I had a bit of publicity last year, I think. I put this video out. I do a lot of off-the-cuff vlogs, video blogs, and I did one where I was talking about the time that I got out of an abusive relationship. And it was a pretty bad one. I ended up having to go into hiding. There were police involved, and it was a really dark time for me. There was on one of those occasions where I was trying to get out, I ended up breaking my back. Now, that was my fault, but that happened because my mindset at the time was, I don't want to be in this life. I need to jump off. I can't do this. And I didn't want to go and do the whole suicide route because I didn't want other people blaming themselves. I couldn't stand the thought of my mum grieving over me and all that. So I thought, right, I'm going to take risks. So I started taking ridiculous risks. And one morning, on the way to work, I was driving like a loony, started to overtake on the brow of a hill. And then there was another car coming the other way. And I suddenly had this epiphany of, oh my God, Taz, this isn't just going to hurt you. You're in danger of hurting other people. So I slammed the anchors on, lost control of the car, down a very deep ditch and into a tree stump at the bottom, and the car ended up kind of diamond-shaped, and I broke my back. Now, I could be sitting there saying, why me, why me, why me? That happened through a series of my choices. It was my choice to, instead of just standing in that spiritual warrior energy and getting out, It was my choice to try and take a way out where I didn't have responsibility. And it was crazy times. I lost I was proper mad back then. I was just in such a state of flux that I didn't know what to do. So my mindset became, if I take as many risks as I can, and I'm still here at the end of the day, clearly I'm meant to be here. And it wasn't until I realised that I was putting other people at risk as well that it shook me out of that. And it's a hell of a shock realising that you're lying on a flatbed with your head packed in sandbags, and you've got a team of doctors looking at your X-ray and shaking their heads. That is a big reality check. And that was another one of my kind of epiphany points where I realised I needed to change something. And I've had a few of those points through my life where I've got to the point where I've realised, what are you playing at, kid? Change something. Change it. Nobody's going to do it for you. If you want change, you've got to do it. And that was one of mine. And it was the breaking my back that led me to get out of that relationship. And that was the start of me starting to turn my life around again. And from then on, I got headhunted for job after job and ended up over here, and the rest of the story you know.
Wow, it's really powerful, Taz. Thanks for your honesty. And do you know what it is that really rings with me? A friend of mine did something similar. Luckily, they didn't have the crash, but they spoke to me about it and said, I was looking for that crash.
Yeah.
I was looking for a way out of the job, getting a month on the sick, that kind of thing, and just getting out there. And that's not the answer.
No, it's not. And the thing is, having that attitude, you can never be sure how it's going to turn around. You can never be sure how it's going to turn out. Call it, I don't know. I like to call it grey magic, if you like. So I'm not a big believer in the whole white versus dark, good and evil stuff. It's not my bag. But I do believe there's this area in the middle. And if you set your intention to attract something into your life and you get it, but it's not quite in the way you wanted it, that's that grey magic where it's gone from a kind of light intention to a dark outcome. So let's say, I need some money, I want to be rich, I want that Ferrari. And then someone very close to you dies horribly, but leaves you the money to buy the Ferrari. You got to be really careful what you're putting out there and what you're wishing for. I do really believe in a lot of the power of manifestation, but it works both ways. If you want to attract good stuff into your life, set your intention, go out there and do it. Don't expect the universe to drop it in your lap. You've still got to work for it, but I believe that in being very, very clear about what it is we want and making sure that comes from the heart and not just the head, we start to at least attract the opportunities for that. But you know what, Ian? The opposite is true as well. So if we're walking around with a negative attitude all the time, if we're walking around trapped in that, I don't have enough money, nobody loves me, I haven't got the right partner, I'm not happy, everything in my life is crap, guess what you're attracting? More and more of the same. So you've got to change your whole mindset. You've got to take control of your life. Nobody else is going to give it to you. Nobody else is going to do it for you. This is it. It is not a dress rehearsal. I do believe we come back, but this is not a dress rehearsal. This is the only chance you have for this particular life. So you can make the most of it. You can get out there and at least try and live your dreams, or you can be miserable and mopey and look back and think, well, what was all that all about? I don't want to be...
I love it. There you go. There's a message, There's a message to take away. Do it.
I don't want to be sitting back at the end thinking, if only. I want to be skidding into that box thinking, my God, what a trip that was. Yeah, go for it.
Let's talk about some good activities. What about this firewalking and glass walking? Come on, let's hear about that.
Stuff.
Come on.
Okay. Well, there's a lot of crap out there about the extreme empowerment stuff I do. And just to go off at a slight tangent again, this is one of those manifestation things. So alongside my corporate life, for years and years and years, I was exploring different ways of working with energy and working with mindset. So I did all the kind of really loony left stuff. I trained in Reiki, I trained in shamanism, I trained in energy work, and then a bit more towards the centre, I trained in neuro-linguistic programming and a bit of hypnosis. And then I wanted more. And only a few weeks after I leapt from the corporate safety, after I shed the golden handcuffs, I was presented with the opportunity to go and train with the same guys that trained Tony Robbins to train as a firewalk instructor. Now, I'd only ever done one firewalk in my life for charity, and it was hideous. I did get burnt. It wasn't a fun experience. I got burnt on the first walk, but the guys organising it were basically saying anyone who only walked once was a bit chicken shit. So, of course, bravado made me walk again, and I got blisters on top of the blisters. It wasn't good, which is a massive message to, if you want to do that stuff, make sure you're working with the right people. So anyway, this opportunity presented. I thought, yeah, I'll go for that. So,
and this is walking on hot coals, yeah?
Yeah, this is training other people to walk on hot coals. So I turn up thinking that I'm just going to learn how to build and host a firewalk. But it wasn't that. There was a lot more to it. It taught me how to run glass walks, so how to teach people to safely walk over about 100 smashed broken bottles. It taught me how to teach people to break arrows with their bare throats. It taught me how to teach people to work as a duo and bend reinforced steel bar between their throats and walk together so that it bends in the middle. All this mad stuff, as well as a lot of the more low ropes team building activities. And it was a really awesome course, but here's where that kind of stuff gets a bit of a bad press, and there's been a lot of stuff being said about it online lately. Tony Robbins is starting to get a lot of flack from people on Facebook. There have been discussions recently where people have said, it was really great, it really empowered me, but then after a couple of months it just slid away. And there's another guy, Richard Wilkins, has been out there saying, oh, well, it's all gimmicky, and then what happens when you do this fire walk, or you get into that level 10 state, then walk outside and see you've got a puncture and it all disappears. And I think the Brad's new right-hander who took over at 4N did a vlog a while back talking about gimmicks like firewalking. That's the trouble. It's not about a gimmick. You have to build it around a larger set of events. Ultimately, if you can walk over fire, what can you do? Well, you can walk over fire. And it's been built into this massive life change. And it's not. Walking across fire, walking across broken glass, breaking an arrow with your throat, none of that changes your life. It absolutely doesn't. They're all metaphors, though.
Sure.
And if the training around that event gives you the tools to go away and change your life, then they are massively, massively powerful. But here's the responsibility thing again. I can only give people the tools. I can give people the tools to get out there and make amazing, inspirational breakthroughs in their lives. But it's up to them to use them after the workshop, after the event. If people just want to turn up and say, look at that, I've just walked over 1,200 degree red hot coals, aren't I amazing? And they just want a story to tell, well, they're not going to get anything from it. But if people turn up who want to affect real, lasting, inspirational breakthrough changes in their lives, I can facilitate that. And I think that's where I'm a bit different to some of the other people who use these kinds of tools. I've got people now who've worked with me a few years back, and they're still coming to me saying that change is still there. I'm turning my life around. I have people on my workshops who go through these massive breakthroughs while they're there. There was a lady, I did a day, a kind of mini version of my Unleash Your Awesome workshop for a women's business and training group in Northamptonshire only a few months back. And there was a lady there, a lovely lady, who's a clinical hypnotherapist. Now, you say clinical hypnotherapist, and you immediately know that it's someone who is possibly quite brain-based, and they're not going to mess you about. And right at the beginning, she said, I'm not breaking an arrow with my throat. Anything else you want to do, that's fine, but I'm not doing that. Okay, don't do that then, I said. Okay, that's fine. And at the end of that workshop, she broke not one but two. Not because I forced her, but because she got to the point where she realised she needed to get through whatever this block was. And she said afterwards, that got her through a block that she'd been carrying around for maybe 15 years. It's the way you hold things. It's the tools that you give people. And I have, there's a 1-year training I've been running for the past, I think about 5-6 years now, which is more spirituality based, but it also brings in a lot of the empowerment stuff. There's a lot of inspirational self-healing that goes on there. And I've got people now who've just signed up for the 3rd and 4th year, and people keep coming back because they're getting something from it.
Wow. And they just I mean, you mentioned the word metaphor, and it was ringing in my mind as well. Yeah. And if you take it as a metaphor, then that could be the catalyst to really change.
Yes. Yeah.
Excellent.
But that's the difference.
Taz, I'm going to keep you for another minute or so just to let us know, because you mentioned you've got your first book coming out?
It is, yeah. Yep.
Come on, let's hear all about it.
Okay. It's called Whispers from the Earth, and it's absolutely not the first book I was going to write.
Really?
Yep. The first book I was going to write was Unleash Your Awesome, and it was all the empowerment stuff and how to be empowered through your business and your life and how to bring about that work-life balance, because we all know work-life balance is not really about what time you clock off and squeezing in a few hours in the evening. It's about enjoying your work so much that it doesn't feel like work. It is part of your life, stopping the division so that you're happy in all areas. That was what my book was going to be. But then, through some of my meditations, I started getting these, what felt like stories dropping through. Now, indigenous cultures all over the globe have used teaching stories for as long as we can remember. I mean, a lot of the Native American guys use them. Stories like Jumping Mouse, some of the African tribes people used them. Jesus used them. All kinds of spiritual indigenous people have used stories to get their messages across. And there's a couple of reasons why this works. If you're going through something like death by PowerPoint, you're getting information, and those words are going into the parts of your brain that understand words. That's it. Then they drop, which is why in a lot of work scenarios we don't retain information or we fall asleep because it's batshit boring. Whereas if you tell somebody in the form of a story, that hits all those other parts of the brain. It hits the things that remind us of touch and taste and smells, and it makes things feel real. And the stories filter through, the teachings filter through, and information is retained for much longer. That's kind of the science behind why so many people in marketing say you've got to build a story behind your brand, so it's not just hitting people with words. Anyway, long story short, so I started getting these stories coming through. And for me, again, with apologies to all those who are very, very right-brain and just think I'm a loony, which is okay, it felt to me like they were coming from a lot of the energies of the land I was working with some of the ancestor spirits I work with through my spiritual work, and they were fully formed, really amazing stories filled with all these different teachings woven between the words. And I started writing them down. And that's all they were ever going to be, just a bank of stories I was keeping, sometimes from dreams, sometimes from meditations, that were just going to sit on my PC. So I sat there doing some proper work, if you like, although I believe it's all proper work. So I don't know, I was doing a spreadsheet or something. And this voice started to drop in. And this is wherein it starts to seem really, really crazy, so bear with me.
Okay. I'm hanging on.
Yeah, I recognise this voice as being one of the ancestor spirits I work with. But if listeners want to believe it's just from my subconscious, I don't have an issue with that. Anyway, it said, those stories you've been writing, send them to a publisher. I was busy, so I said, shut up, go away. And it came again and again, until eventually I down tools and said, okay, if you're that clever, which publisher? And this voice came, Moon Books. I said, I've never heard of Moon Books, don't be ridiculous, there's no such publisher. Carried on working, and it kept dropping in until I Googled Moon Books. And there it was. Oh my God, there is a publisher called Moon Books. Okay. So I did the old cut and paste job on some of the things I'd written so far, waxed them through. And within a week, I got my first book publishing deal. So that's how it happened. So Whispers from the Earth was officially launched on March the 25th. It's available from Amazon and all good booksellers. I've got a launch event and signing in Spalding in Lincolnshire on April the 7th at 7:15 p.m. where I'll be doing a reading and Q&A and all stuff like that. Signings as well, obviously. Now, the thing with this book is that although you could say it's aimed at the mind, body, spirit audience, the stories in it carry teachings that will work for anyone. I got some really powerful endorsements for the book before it went live, and you can see some of them on my Facebook page and on the website. And the point is that the stories will work for anyone. And the old guys in the indigenous cultures would tell one story to an entire tribe of people, and different people would be hit with different teachings according to what they needed to hear. And they used to call it shooting people with a story. So if we go back full circle to this idea that one of the reasons I've stepped out of corporate and into the bigger world, whether I'm doing corporate coaching or motivational speaking or team building with a corporate, or whether I'm working with a bunch of individuals who want to find their why and their drivers on a more spiritual basis, is still working with more people. And this book and the stories in it help me to take some of the messages to a larger audience.
That's a great way to round it up, Taz, because that's why you're here, because I know the stories will work for anyone.
Yeah.
Fantastic. You know what it is? This has been the longest episode because I could talk to you forever. You got one of them voices where I'm just melting away, and I'm not even writing anything down. I should be thinking of things to ask. I'm just listening.
Oh, you know where I am, Ian. You know where I am. Maybe we need to serialise.
Yeah. Well, do you know what it is? I'll read the book, okay?
Yeah, I do. And tell me what you think.
Definitely will do, and I hope our listeners will too. So Taz, thanks very much, and please keep in touch.
I will
do. And we'll hook up on. We've got our Facebook page there, and if anybody wants to ask you anything,
yep.
I'm sure you'll be up for it.
Yep.
Good stuff.
Throw anything at me. Facebook, Twitter, my website. Any questions you've got, throw them my way, and I will do my very best to answer. I can't guarantee you'll like the answer. I'll do my best to answer truthfully and authentically.
I'll put all those on the show notes,
Thank
Taz.
you.
So best of luck for your signing and your launch.
Thank you very much, Ian.
And we'll speak soon. Thanks,
Absolutely.
Taz.
It's been a pleasure. Take care.
Well, I hope you enjoyed Taz. I really wanted to have someone like Taz on the show. She's got so much to offer, and I could listen to her for hours. I really started this show to be quite diverse. I didn't want to do it the same as any other shows where they interview entrepreneurs and ask the same old questions every time. I'm trying to make it diverse, and I understand it's not for everybody, and some shows will appeal to others and vice versa, but I enjoyed that. So maybe I'm being a bit selfish because I love to hear Taz there. So again, please keep in touch. We've got Facebook plugins on the industryangel.com webpage. There's plenty of places to get in touch. Let's have your guest suggestions and your feedback. I'd love to hear what you think about Taz. And until next time, I'm Ian Farrer. This is the Industry Angel, and thanks for listening.